All right, a little bit about me. So I'm a math professor at Emporia State University, and when it comes to technology and mathematics, I presented for a number. Well, I helped organize a conference called the Kansas City Math Technology Expo that ran for a number of years, and it was a group of people getting together and talking about all the ways that you can use mathematics, especially, or you can use technology to improve the teaching of mathematics. And one of the themes that I kind of really grabbed onto early on in that conference was the reading of mathematics, because I went all the way through undergrad and even part of the way through grad school without really knowing how to read a math textbook. So I was really interested in ways that I could improve that vital skill earlier on in my students' careers. And I, in particular, wanted them to avoid that mistake. And for this, and this is not going to be the whole talk, by the way, but it's kind of the motivation for the first tool that I'm going to share. Especially in proofwriting, it's really important for students to get exposure to other styles of writing proofs and other ways of reading proofs. And one of the ways that I found really helpful to make it easier to get into reading a textbook was the free service called Perusall. It's a free collaborative textbook / document annotation and discussion. It's not strictly for OER. You can have you can have your students purchase a textbook through Perusall, and they get a cut of it, and then your students can access the textbook through their online service. But I think it works best just as you upload whatever you want, and students can go in there and annotate it. I'll be showing quite a few examples of this. It has some nice LMS integration, so I have it integrated with Canvas. So when my students go to their Canvas course, they just click the Perusall link and it takes them directly to the course textbook with the ability to annotate it in a collaborative way. And it has some other features. As students comment, it will use some machine learning to try to grade like how high or low effort the comment was and give the student a grade based on that. It's very flexible. I tend to use it more as a carrot than a stick. So if they put basically anything, they get credit. And then it's just kind of it's supposed to be a pre-lecture reading is the way that I use it. So they go in, they look at the text, they highlight where they were confused or any places they had questions. I can answer it, and that actually makes my class time more efficient because I'm then able to spend time in class going over the sections of the reading that students had more questions about. And, in my experience, if I ask students to do a reading and then I come to class and say, anybody have questions, even the ones that did the reading and had questions might not remember exactly where they were when they had those questions. So this is a way of reducing that friction for students to be able to engage with the textbook and ask questions as they are encountering any bits of confusion. So one thing I wanted to try is, we won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but if you go to app.perusall.com and you try it out with using this course code, you can see some examples of how that works. So let me put both of those in chat. And that'll take you over to this course, where I have several different options of how you can upload materials. So for example, there's a PDF textbook that I'm using in an undergraduate math course. And this is the interface that you get. So students can go through and they can just highlight, oops, maybe not that much. They can say, here is a comment or a question that I had about the reading. And then it generates a thread. And any student can then reply to that thread. I can go in there and see it. You can do @replies. You can do thumbs up. You can flag it as a question so that I get a notification to go in and check it out. I like it for these little homework problems. People can take a picture of a solution and upload it. And then I can give them comments on little practice problems as they're doing the reading, so that they're just able to get a lot more feedback. And in general, especially for reading mathematics, where it's so dense, that they can highlight as soon as they have a question about something, I can say, all right, yeah, this is where this is headed. This is how it connects back to an earlier thing. And because it's directly on top of the textbook, it's a lot easier to connect what I'm saying to what they're reading. Whereas if they ask a question in class, I can say, oh, well, they were probably doing this and this, but without the textbook right there in front of me, without them having the textbook right there in front of them, it's harder to make those connections. So this really does reduce the friction. It's basically a discussion board layered right on top of a textbook. Another thing that you can do, you can link to YouTube videos or upload your own videos. So the way that works is if you had a question somewhere here, you can just drop a comment at a particular timestamp, and then I can go on and say, okay, what I meant here was this, or whatever their question about that particular flagged moment in the video, I can give some feedback. And then the other thing that you can do is very flexible in terms of what you can upload. So this is a web-based textbook. So you can upload a web page and have them do the exact same thing. Let me just see, is there anybody that has made it in? Okay, so there's one person in. And then if there are comments, I will get little notification bubbles on the left-hand side telling me, oh, someone made a comment. With the scoring of it all, let's see if I can show some of that. So you can, if you have very large sections, you can group them into groups of 5, groups of 20, groups of 50, however you want it. And for the scoring, you can decide to go just on like number of annotations, like make 3 annotations that are above a minimum threshold of quality, and then they get full credit. It tends to default to this holistic thing where it takes into account that they've spent time on the reading, that they were upvoting other people's comments, or that they were making comments, and it tries to synthesize all of this together into a score. I tend not to do that. I think it's really good to have that if you're treating this more as a legitimate graded assignment. If I'm just doing it as a pre-lecture reading where I just want them to get in there and do it, I usually just go for annotation content only, and I set some number of annotations, and I go from there. The machine learning grading component is not perfect. It's probably better if students are like writing paragraphs or writing multiple sentence responses. It's not good when students are writing a bunch of notation. So if they give a very detailed computation, for example, Perusall doesn't know how to like intelligently decipher whether that was a good comment or not, so it tends to score it as a 0. So I have to go in and manually update that. But if you are in a discipline where people are just writing more natural language sorts of responses, then it works pretty well. Let's see if there's anything. I don't see any comments yet, but maybe I'll check back in on this and see if there are other comments later, and then I can kind of show you how that interaction goes back and forth. Now, there is an alternative to Perusall, and that is this hypothesis service, and it's more of a web wrapper. So I haven't used it, but the way it works is you install a little Chrome or Firefox or Safari extension, a browser extension, and then you can turn certain pages into a hypothesis assignment. So it's the same kind of thing where you open up a PDF or you open up a web page, and then students in the class can annotate that, but it's not a separate service like Perusall is. I think that they're both great options if you're trying to encourage students to really engage with the reading and to help them, maybe give them some kind of incentive to do the pre-lecture reading, which is something that if I wasn't graded on it, I probably would not have done it. At the same time, I don't want it to be something that students get harshly penalized for not doing it. So it's just a little bit of an extra credit that they can use to better understand the textbook and improve their reading skills. So this is kind of what it looks like in a more robust thread. It does support LaTeX, which is the math typesetting notation that is common in mathematics. And you can do @replies. You can see who's talking. You can see these scores here, score 1, score 1. I can manually edit those if necessary. So it's really nice because if I was doing this on a discussion board, the math LaTeX integration is usually a lot more difficult. So the fact that we're talking about mathematics and they could very easily use the math notation in the text is a big improvement. All right, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in terms of the first tool, which is how I use Perusall to encourage students to engage with these free materials. The next thing I wanted to talk about is kind of my journey when it comes to content creation. I got some grants to record lecture videos for an OER textbook in an advanced calculus class. And my plan was one semester, I would record the videos, and then the next semester I would caption the videos. And I found out very quickly that that was going to be terrible. Like I got through most of the semester of recording videos when I went back to try to caption an early one, and it was terrible. Like one, it was hard. Two, it was just painful listening to myself and make all the small mistakes. I talked about this in a session yesterday. It was not something I wanted to repeat. So I came to the conclusion that the best thing for me to do would be to script my videos ahead of time and then record them according to the script. Sorry, that's just a dummy slide, my bad. If I was gonna record it with a script, what I needed was a teleprompter. And so you can see my first iteration here. This is duct tape, black construction paper, and a little CD jewel case all on some cardboard. And this worked for an entire semester's worth of videos. I kept adding more duct tape, kept adding more black construction paper, and it was a hack, but it worked. And the way it works is you just put your phone kind of on that bottom piece of cardboard and you use a teleprompting app. It projects it, and what you see is the reflected image of the text coming across that little CD jewel case, but the camera is seen right through it. So you're able to look into the camera while reading from a script. Over time, I thought, I should really upgrade this if I'm going to use it in more than one class. And my first thought was, all right, just go to Amazon. If I can make it with duct tape, I can probably find something similar for like 20 bucks. And the answer was no, there isn't anything for that cheap. I think the minimum that I saw was $70, and a one that had decent functionality that could clip onto webcam was upwards of $150. And I'm thinking that is ridiculous. If I can do something for duct tape, there has to be a middle ground. And I came up with, or I didn't come up with, but I found a 3D printed option, which is my little prop here. So this is exactly what you see in there. And you have the glass. In fact, I can probably do a little example here. The text won't be reflected in the right way, but this is kind of what it looks like to read from a teleprompter. Now, again, the text is backwards. If you get the correct app here, then it will reflect everything as needed, and it will listen to you speak so that it will scroll as you go. And there, you just mount it on top of a webcam, and now I'm able to read right from the script as I'm looking into the webcam, and 3D printed with a little, found little pieces of plastic laying around to finish it out. And I mistakenly 3D printed it in red instead of black, so I had to buy a can of spray paint, but altogether it was probably less than 10 bucks. And I got a lot of use out of it. So the one that I use in particular is mounted for the very common Logitech C920 webcam. It's very ubiquitous. In fact, maybe I can, there, you can see in the reflection that if you have a webcam like that, that's what this mounts with. But you can also mount it with any DSLR mount. That's what you see in the picture here. So you can kind of print these different holders in the back to fit whatever camera device you're using. And of course, if both of those seem unnecessary, or maybe you have some grant money that you can spend, then getting a nice teleprompter, especially one that maybe fits an iPad so the text is a bit bigger, that's a great option. There are a lot of apps that you can use. I use PromptSmart, which I think was not particularly cheap, but I bought like a 1-year subscription, and then I canceled it when I made all my videos. You want something that's going to be able to scroll with you, or you get a teleprompter that has a little remote that you can kind of scroll the screen that way. Now, the issue with that is when I'm all done, what I have is a recorded video and I have a transcript, but that's not useful if I want to make captioned videos to make them accessible, because I need them to be synced up. And a couple of things that I wanted that I talked a little bit about yesterday, but I can share more details today. One of the things that I wanted was for the captions to have the math notation in them, which is something I'd never really seen before. If you're doing all these talks on mathematics, what you don't want to see is the integral of x squared divided by, and then have all that stuff written out in English words. That's not a very helpful way of sharing mathematics. And forget mathematics, there's plenty of other disciplines have truncated notation. Maybe teach chemistry and you want to have like H2O look correct, like in correct chemical notation, rather than just like H space 2 space O. Whether it's physics, you have lots of equations, or maybe you have, if you're teaching a foreign language and you have special characters, a great way of incorporating those into the video would be to make the captions reflect the content that you are speaking, which is not something that can happen if, one, you're using auto-generated captions, or two, if someone is captioning the videos for you, but doesn't necessarily have the subject knowledge. So I know that some universities might have a dedicated person to caption videos for you, but if it has words from another language or dense notation, they're not necessarily going to have the expertise to make the captions look the way that you want them. So one thing that I like to use is this unicoding. So this is standard math notation in LaTeX. This is a typesetting language that most mathematicians are familiar with. And I can paste whatever I want in here. I could be whole sentences. I could type integral of x squared dx. And you can see this handling the superscripts. It's handling the integral sign. I can do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You can get equations to look very nice by pasting whatever you want in there. So here's a chemical example, or just some other silly things. And then once you type it in here, you just copy paste this into your script file. It's a little bit unwieldy if you have a multi-line or multi-paragraph script that you type in here, but you can still copy and paste this into some notepad file to get it typeset the way you want. Another option, though, this is more specific to mathematics or other disciplines that use mathematics style notation. But there is a tool that I wrote that is more general purpose, and I do have a link to it later. For now, here's some code. You don't need to use the code. You don't need to worry about the code. All you need is to modify two things. You have some script file. So you can see I have an example here. I have all these commands, these backslash commands. So /r, /2, this /inv, some Greek stuff. And then what I have below, and this is what you could modify. Whenever I have a backslash command, I just put it on a line, I put a space, and then I copy and paste the Unicode character that I want. So what I did was I Googled Unicode empty set, and I just copy, and I went in here and I just, and I pasted that. So if you're dealing with special characters in a foreign language, all you have to do is find the Unicode version of that character and then come up with your own backslash command. You can name these however you want, and then space whatever else, and then you paste your script in here. Then what my code does, you don't need to understand the code, it's just going to go through, read in that file, and every time there's a backslash command, it's going to look it up and see if it's in here. And if it's in here, it will replace that string with the corresponding character that you put next to it. So when I run that, it produces the finalized output. So look at all the commands here, and then it turns into nice Greek letters here, square root sign, integral sign, infinity, summation, empty set, all the nice special characters you would want. So it's very extensible. And if you have any questions on this, please email me. I'm more than happy to work with you, get started. As soon as you get it working once, then it's just copy and paste from then on out. So I don't want this to be intimidating. Like, yes, this is a site for programmers, but to use this tool, you don't need to know any Python or know any code. You just have to come up with your own name for something, copy and paste in the special character that you want, paste in your script, and then hit run. And then you will get exactly what you want. So this is that custom tool that I was referring to. One thing that is important to note is that captions should have short lines. I think the recommended is like 30 characters per line, but in YouTube, they will do double lines. So you can have 60 lines that YouTube will split up into 2 lines. And one thing that is important when you're doing the teleprompter thing is you probably want something that's easy for you to read. So the way that I write my script in the teleprompter is not necessarily 60 characters per line or 30 characters per line. I'm writing it in sentences so I can get the timing of the prose correct. So I need a tool then to shrink everything down to 60 characters. You can do that by hand, but there are some things to make it a lot easier. So for example, let me see if I can pull up this script. Copy that. This is, again, a nightmare looking tool, but there are only 2 things you need to do. So you paste in your script, change it to HTML, and then you can just change the line length, and you can see it changing on the right. So this will take whatever you put in, and shrink it down. And I guess what I should be using is the output with the special characters in it. And so this will take it so that now it's in 7 lines where all the lines have less than 60 characters. And this would be my main script file that I'm going to use for timing. So yeah, the only 2 settings you need from this nightmare of settings over here are the first 2. Change it to HTML and then change the print width to 60 or 30 if you want single lines. The last step to get everything synced up, because now I have a really nicely formatted transcript, but my video doesn't know when things should be synced up. And this is where YouTube can be very beneficial. When I upload a video to YouTube, there is an option to upload subtitles at that time. I found that setting to not work. Most of the time, I have to wait until the video is processed. Then I go through these settings, which again, I'm mainly putting this up so you can look at it when you review the sites later. But if I go to some video that doesn't have captions in it, so I went to, let me do that slower. I edit the details of the video. And then if I go to show more and find the language and caption certification, there's a subtitles menu. If I do that, it'll open up this. So it probably has automatic generated captions, which again, if you have, those are a good thing to have kind of in the meantime as a stopgap. But what you really want is to add your own English subtitles. And here's where I can upload a file. And you upload them without timing, because YouTube will then listen to what the video is saying and it will read what's in the caption and try to sync them up as best as possible. It's not perfect, but it's actually really good and also avoids a mountain of work for you or someone else to have to do to sync everything up. And then once you upload it, you need to wait for it to process and then go back and verify that it actually worked. Sometimes it's a little bit off, and if that's the case, you might go back to your captions and see, is there like too much notation in it, or are there sections where you deviated from the script by too much? I've actually used that to determine cases where I just missed a paragraph and need to go back and re-record a section. I found that even though YouTube doesn't understand the notation, it is fine to find the English that it does recognize and sync it up accordingly. And so even with all the extra notation in it, it works. And then I go through and I remove the auto-generated captions just so it doesn't default to that. And I use this for 2 whole semesters. I'll kind of show an example. I won't play the audio of the video. Actually, I want to click it from here. Maybe scroll down to a later video that really does have a lot of notation in it. Good, it is muted. So let's see here. Starting to get a little bit of notation. I'd really like to see something that has I guess this one's not as heavy. This one probably is. Yeah, so you can see this subtitle has a lot in it. It's got subscript K, subscript 0. It's got an integral sign, more subscripts. It's something that I'm not used to seeing when it comes to YouTube mathematics. And I watch a lot of YouTube mathematics. I like to watch things with captions on. This seems to be less common. And I think it's a great feature for students to know this is exactly what I'm saying and then to connect it to the slide. I guess one thing I do have to do when I'm recording these videos is on my tablet, I put a little Post-it note kind of in the bottom third of the screen to make sure that I don't accidentally write underneath where I want the captions to be. Oh, and I wanted to stop back over here. Is there anything in Perusall? So I'm playing around in that. Nope, that's okay. That's okay. But those are the main tools that I wanted to share. I know I went through it kind of quickly, but the idea is you can always go back through these slides or go back through the video to kind of catch the details. That's all that I had. Are there any questions? Or anything you'd like to see me demo some more? Because I could show more demos. Someone asked about what the learning curve is. What learning curve for which aspect? For Perusall or for the captioning or for using a teleprompter? For Perusall, I find it very easy to use Perusall. When it comes to LMS integration with Canvas, I could just do Perusall Canvas integration. And it has some good steps on how to get everything set up. You add a custom tool, you paste in like 2 codes. If your university doesn't have a code, you just send an email to a particular, it's somewhere on here. It tells you, send an email saying, hey, I want a Perusall access code. Usually you get a response within the hour. And then it just shows up as a little link in the course navigation. You click that, it'll take students directly here. And you add things in 2 different ways. I can add things to the library, or I can add it from a Perusall catalog, a web page, from Dropbox, from my device. I can copy and paste from another course. Again, a whole host of things. You can add podcasts. I actually had kind of a men's group that we were listening to podcasts through this and dropping in our comments as we listen to them. Then when you want to add an assignment, you just take, so if you have this is actually nice. I can't show it right now. Well, maybe I can. Let's see if I add assignment. All right, I chose a subsection of this, but if you upload a book, like a PDF textbook that has a table of contents, Perusall will detect that table of contents, and you can assign single sections without having to do specific page numbers. If you just say, hey, I want chapter 1, section 2, you can just click that and it will assign just those pages from the PDF. And you can assign it for a particular deadline. You can change whether or not comments are accepted before or accepted after the deadline. There's an extend deadline. When there are more comments in here, you can get some analytics, like where you can generate this confusion report where it will tell you where the most comments were concentrated. And that side of it, I find it to be very intuitive.
Tom, there was a comment in the chat that asked about demoing the workflow where you just deployed the script.
Deploy the script, sure. Let me pull this over. That's right, I need to minimize that. Okay, so if I find one of my like raw notepad files. Okay, so this is the script that I typed. I'll make it big and then I'll zoom in. So this is kind of the entire script that I wrote. And if I want to deploy my script, okay, so first I type this all out, then I go back and review it. I kind of practice with it a little bit. I upload it to my teleprompter app. Or wait, no, that's not the next step. Sorry. I take this once I reviewed it. I go over to my tool. Here's my script. Paste that in. I need to make one other change because I have my own special characters file, which I think is a little bit longer than the one that's here. Paste that in and then run it. And now my output file has all the notation that I encoded. So you see these subscripts here, you see the boldface R, you see less than or equal to signs, all that stuff is now pasted in. So then I would copy and paste this into a new text file. So let's call this script with notation. And then I would upload this to my teleprompter, record the video. I would then shorten the lines. So paste this in. Now I've got it on the right-hand side with shorter lines. So I don't want that, I want a new one. So I'll call this short lines. And then this is what I would upload to YouTube. So I record the video, I upload it to YouTube, and then I would add, without timing, the short lines. And then wait for YouTube to handle the timings. Of course, this is not going to work because this is the wrong video. It will not be able to sync it up. It'll be humorous to see how it tries to do it, but it would not work. And then from here, you would publish and then verify that it works after the fact. Discard changes. I did see a question that if we were to do one step at a time, what would be that first step? I think if you're just trying to try things out, you don't need all these special tools. For example, my early videos did not have a lot of notation that I did find and replace on. Especially in the early sections of a course, I probably don't have 20 different commands. Maybe I just need the intersection symbol. So I might take one of the early sections, something like this, that's finalized. And I might just have a couple commands like \subset, and then I would just do a standard like word find and replace, like find all the times I type \subset, and then paste in the subset symbol from the internet in the Unicode, and then just do a find and replace. If you only have like 3 or 4 special symbols, just a manual find and replace is going to be way simpler. But as you build up kind of a library of these special symbols, that's when it can be beneficial. Similarly, if I'm writing a 5-minute video and I'm doing it for the first time, I might manually insert the line breaks and not worry about a special tool to do that. The main thing is write a script, write a video for it, and kind of do the least amount that necessary to get a good result, and then see if YouTube syncs up the captions. Once you get one pass through this whole workflow, then you can start to say, well, this would be a lot faster if, and that's where the tools come into play. Like if you realize I could do this process a lot faster, or I could have much better captions if only I could scale this up, that's when the tools become useful, but that's not a necessary condition to be able to have a script turn into synced subtitles.
We're down to about 6 minutes in the session left, so wrapping up. But if there are more questions, you feel free to put them in the chat or unmute and ask.
And I will leave the Perusall course open for a couple of days. So if you want to, I should have put this on the final slide as well. But if you want to use this code just to get in and see how the commenting works, by all means, try it out. It'll be there to just see how video playback works, how it works to highlight things, and how it works to insert a picture or insert links. That's something I've enjoyed a lot. Students will ask a question that's just barely outside the scope of the course. And I can just drop a Wikipedia link in there and say, go check this out. You're asking good questions. And thank you, everybody, for coming.
Lots of great information. Thank you, Tom, for presenting today.